Hi, how we doing? Thanks for joining me again while we read Venger's Guide to Mastering Chaos at the Table, run tabletop role-playing games with confidence by me, Scott Docherty. So last time we were talking about the hate about random encounters. So let's talk about their defining backstory. I get it though. The history of the game, of how random encounters and the role of the dungeon or game master have evolved, hasn't helped. It's believed that the concept of random encounters and wandering monsters really crystallised from two games. Chainmail, first developed by Gary Gygax and Jeff Perrin in 1971, and Avalon Hill's Outdoor Survival from 1972. In the very first draft in 1973 by Gygax and Dave Arneson of the original edition of Dungeons & Dragons, from which real interest began to evolve in making dangerous hex-based travel between dungeons and other locations an actual part of the game. The rulebook mentioned that dungeon masters should use as equipment the rules from Chainmail and Outdoor Survival when designing encounters. Amongst other things, it was this developing synergy between these games that helped separate D&D from all the other similar games being played at that time. Mainly because, rather than this being solely a war game where you spent most of the time strategising how to defeat them other dudes, in this game you were dealing with individual characters trying their level best simply to survive in chaotic wilderness and dungeons. And back in what they call the day, therefore, random encounters were the very definition of random. Long rest in the hex crawl woods, you say? Let's roll this and see what happens. Advancing through dungeons of the underworld, you say? Well, I rolled this, so say hi to my throng of wandering monsters. You're a table of monsters. You rolled to see which of those monsters the party would face, how far away they were, and whether there was any surprise in play. Maybe what the monster's initial demeanour was. Job done. Over the years, however, the way the game was being played began to change. In D&D, and in the other similar games that followed, the popularity of random encounters began to wane as the rules developed to reflect a richness entering tabletop role-playing games. These days, let's face it, TTRPGs have matured. Unlike early adopters of the first of these games, those focused initially on basic progressive levelling up and rudimentary delves into deeper and nastier holes in the ground. And although some do still love a basic slice of hack and slash, players of today tend to want more from their time at the table. They want immersion, they want story arcs, they want entertainment and fun and heartbreak and drama and more. And they want this from the moment they sit at the table until the last dice are rolled. Crucially, they want this from the dungeon or game master. Over time, a menacing expectation has broken the dam and continued to saturate the world of tabletop RPGs. An expectation that the dungeon or game master is the one person in charge of the narrative, of the story, of the player's fun. Now, I love online streaming and content as much as the other dude, but to my mind, it's this perpetual content that's given strength and weight to this expectation. I've watched over the years as certain dungeon or game masters in popular games, despite, to be fair to them, any objections on their part, have become almost idolised and heralded as the one mainly responsible for the dazzling amazingness of their game. Every week I breathe in screeds of blogs and posts and streams and more that for myriad reasons appear to raise the dungeon or game master on a higher pedestal than the other players. Moving a step back though, looking at the actual people behind all the blogs and the posts and the streams, the fundamental organisms of their evolution sprang from two elements. First, the perceived necessity from the outset in tabletop role-playing games for a referee to be responsible for pretty much all preparation and knowledge at the table. They buy the game, they learn the game, they teach the players the game, and if any decisions need made or rules interpreted, their word is final. For this, and to understand just how instrumental the referee is always meant to be in the design of such games, it's helpful to look first to the evolution of this role in the early 19th century, from the Reichswitz and Prussian Kriegspiel referees, both employing their intricate science of command and the premise of the umpire or referee enjoying total authority, isolating the other players from the rules and parameters of play, through to Michael Korn's Modern War in Miniature in 1966, which spoke of wargame referees as the only ones who need to be familiar with the rules. And finally, to that very first draft of D&D in 1973, which made clear as early as the foreword that the campaign referee will have to devote quite a number of hours laying out the maps for dungeons and upper terrain before the affair begins. continuing in the published first edition that the referee will have to have sufficient time to meet the demands of his players. In preparation for the campaign, the referee bears the entire burden. This was recognised by the likes of Tim Waddell writing in issue 7 of the Wargamers information zine, when he referred to the quality of a game being reliant on the amount of work the ref is willing to put in. It depends mostly on the ref. He is the game, so to speak. I mean, sheesh. The original spell, Contact Higher Planes, on page 39H of the first draft of D&D, even allowed a magic user character to seek advice from a higher plane, the referee. And yea, lowly players, that is my command, for I have spake it. And the second organism behind this potentially overwhelming pressure on the dungeon or game master is the development of adventure modules. Thinking only about D&D again, TSR, Tactical Studies Rules, the company given birth in 1973 by Gary Gygax and Don Kay, were the first to make adventures, or the first to take adventures, rules and scenarios that had been played out in early D&D groups and tournaments in the US, and published them as modules designed as an aid to referees. And so were gifted classics like Blackmoor Temple of the Frog, Wee Warriors, Palace of the Vampire Queen, Guide to the City-State of the Invincible Emperor, Keep in the Borderlands, the infamous Tomb of Horrors, and Temple of Elemental Evil. Fantastic work that I definitely recommend you try out, and which paved the way for the more recent Uber adventure modules like Curse of Strahd, Baldur's Gate, Descent into Avernus, and Vecna, Eve of Ruin. This module evolution has been imitated to various extents in other tabletop RPGs, both fantasy and futuristic, and I'm constantly amazed by the sheer eye-watering scale of choice available now in adventures and modules that spin off major game releases. But although the work in all these published modules and adventures has been truly magnificent, think about how that's come across to your average dungeon or game master. Think about all the writing that's gone into publishing a module. Maps, NPCs, plots, monsters, stat blocks, the old kit and caboodle, all written down there in black and white, with breathtaking artwork and compiled expertly by huge teams of professional game designers. And add to this the numerous streams you see online week in, week out, by professional actors and experienced campaigners who've polished their craft and moved through modules like this or through their own intricately crafted games with emotive, compelling drama. And yeah, in the context of this historical control which has been afforded over the years to the referee, think of what all this has implied for your average dungeon or game master thinking about running their own game at home. Oh right, so the players want me to run this game. So the last module we played had all this stuff in it, and they're all fans of that big screen game. I guess I'll need to come up with the same kind of stuff for my own campaign. If the players ask me about anything, I'll need to know all the rules, everything about what might happen, and have an answer prepared. Because if I don't have it prepared and the game then sucks, yep, it'll be all my fault. No man. And so it's this very same expectation which has led swathes of new and even seasoned dungeon or game masters to freeze in terror at the thought of messing up, to handle the weight of this expectation by planning every last detail of their upcoming sessions and campaigns because they feel that it's all on them. And the more they plan, the more intricate stories and plans they write for the players before anyone's even sat down at the table, the less space there's left for improvisation in the moment, and the more likely it's become for the introduction of chaos, and yeah, even the idea of random encounters, to completely stress out these dungeon or game masters as they turn cartwheels trying to squeeze everything into what else they had planned. I mean, if something happens that hasn't been written down and prepared, it ain't fair on them, it ain't fair on the players, and it definitely ain't necessary. But right now, it is what it is. As this perceived need for more planning and depth throughout the game has developed over time, the corresponding relevance of random encounters has become lost amongst all that narrative. It's now less about chucking in random encounters to control how quickly the players devour the pie you've baked, slowing them down to make it last longer, and more about making sure how juicy every single bite of that pie tastes, making sure the players leave the table utterly satisfied after an amazing meal. Talk about being pressure cooked. You do still have random encounter tables popping up here and there, of course, and there are plenty of resources out there focused solely on them. But here's the thing. Although rolling in these random tables is a random act in itself, all the legwork and thinking you might then feel pressurised to undertake in order to maintain immersion, to add in all that conflict and drama and movie-style moments now typically craved by the players, particularly if that doesn't come naturally to you, can end up giving you a total headache. It takes away from the theory of it being picked from the table and thrown swiftly at the players. And like I say, in the context of all eyes being in the dungeon or game master, has definitely contributed to the skeletal frame of random encounters, often being cast aside these days in favour of less random story arcs. So next time we'll talk about what's the beef with random encounter tables, and again see where that takes us. Thanks again for watching, listening, subscribing, liking, and all of that kind of stuff. If you want the book, it's in Amazon on vingersdecks.com and hitting the shelves near you hopefully soon. So thanks again. I'll see you next time.